start recording. All right, everybody sees us? Group counseling. Who's comfortable with the group counseling skills? Everybody feel they do a good group? Do we think that it's something that is a skill, or do we just go in there with a worksheet and just kind of kick it?
I feel it depends on the group, the topic of the group, what type of group it is. And sometimes the clients that are there, some participate more than others. So sometimes you need to bring up more skills to get participation going and stuff like that.
And we're going to cover, that's a good answer, because sometimes it is like that. Sometimes it's very structured. Sometimes they're like psychoeducation, where we're more like teachers. Sometimes it's process related, where we are just kind of kicking it. I mean, some of the best groups I've had is I go in there with some plan. You need a plan and a purpose, but as long as you have that and then you have the right clients that are going to have that good conversation, then that can be some of the best groups I ever had. I got some reasons for leading groups: efficiency, experience of commonality, greater variety of resources and viewpoints. That's from the members and staff. A sense of belonging, skills practice, feedback, vicarious learning from each other, real life approximation, and kind of like a commitment. Because we all have been to school, or most of us, or at least heard of the thing. There is such a thing as like group think and group processes and like group formation. I don't know if I covered that, but I am huge on that when I tell you an outpatient. I used to think that I seen that. I think it's Yalom was the guy, I think. I know I've said it to some of you, the Foreman, Storman, Norman, Performan. Have you guys ever heard this? This applies to the groups we do in setting. This applies to the groups of people. It's a theory that applies to even us as a team. When we come together, like if we were to form out of nowhere, we all strangers, we don't know each other, there's going to probably be some confrontation to begin in. That would be the storming stage. And then like boundaries are set and like kind of like group norms are established. Then you get into that's like the Norman. Then Performing would be like the task the group is supposed to be dedicated to doing. And that's what it is. And I know that in inpatient especially, you see that clear as day when we have an influx, quick out, like 10 go out, 10 come in. It's going to be a whole new dynamic. Because even with that, like us as an established group, as a team, we have like cohesive group members that have been in it for a long time. So like we get a new staff, for instance, we're going to all kind of absorb them and train them the way that we're supposed to do it. I also think the residential programs have this. And I think that might be one of the differences, because clients stay there so long, they don't necessarily see the type of behaviors do it inpatient, because they have usually, not always, but typically they have a good core group. Because if your core group is wicked, you're in trouble. If you got a good core group though, you're gonna be all right. Kinds of group: education, discussion, task-oriented, growth and experiential, counseling and therapy, support groups, and self-help. And I think we pretty much do all these in our settings. Impact therapy, theory of an approach to leading groups. Impact therapy, if you have not heard it, it is pretty spot on. I came across it in the class I teach, so I definitely wanted to share it. It was one of those things that kind of just validated my practice, like how I did it. And it's really talking about, there's a difference between group facilitation and group leadership. Facilitation would be that open discussion type, where we're kind of just refereeing, making sure everybody stays above board and on track. Group leading is where we're like the leader of the group. And even though we belong to the group, we're like definitely apart from that. And we're the ones that are kind of like leading the pace and showing where to go with it. And I think in our embedded programs, that is most likely what you're going to see, just because the nature of where the clients are at when they get here. A lot of them, especially the inpatient, but even intensive residents, they ain't far behind in the recovery process. And also I like the impact therapy because it's about combining learning styles. So you're going to want to develop your curriculum. Maybe like anybody who's seen me do a group, I love a nice TED talk, but that's not the core of it. That's like a grounding exercise that kind of gets the message started. Then maybe a worksheet or something that, or an activity that we're going to do that also fits. It's hitting all learning styles at the same time. So you're reaching more members and kind of like catering to them. You don't know everybody's learning style, but if you do a pretty decent job at like putting it out there in different ways of delivery, you're going to get the message across to everybody. Leader directed versus group directed. Leader directed means that the leaders has an understanding of the members' needs and structures the group to meet those needs. Group directed, the leader will start the group. We'll turn the group over to the members and have the members determine the direction and content. So that would be more open process group, a discussion-based group. Both have a place, however, group directed would be at discretion of leader and always the role of the group leader to keep group on goal and meeting group purposes and objectives. So this is even taking it further than I said. even if we're gonna go that group directed and that freestyle flow, that's still, as a group leader, that's the choice we're making. I think that fits us spot on, because yes, we got a good group going on and we can just throw out a topic. That's still our decision as the leader. It's not necessarily let's just call it what it is. If we got the wrong group of clients, we got a rough and rowdy bunch, and we don't go in there with any type of plan or control, they're just going to eat our asses up like we are the substitute teacher who doesn't know what we're doing. Leadership functions, there are both contents and process functions that the leader must address. Contents, the task or the purpose of the group, and the process is the interaction between members and the leader, and how members participate in that group. What makes an effective leader? Experience with individual counseling, experience and comfort with groups, planning and organizational skills, knowledge of relevant topics, and understanding of basic human issues and conflicts. And she in this slide made me why I wanted to do this training, because I remember when I started out as a counselor, groups were intimidating. I mean, I started an outpatient. No one really gave me any clear guidance on what to do. I did go to college. I started with some workbooks and kind of developed my own style out of that. But it took me a minute, and it was something that was very intimidating, and you don't want to ask questions because you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing, but you should ask questions, and we should be collaborative. But in reality, you know, we have things, we got our own shit, and that's not always easy for everybody to do. And so knowing what to do, knowing how to do it, was kind of something I developed on my own. But I think that they are skills that anybody can learn. And any of you that started, especially when I was in the last position, I give everybody like a starter kit now that kind of gives group time. And I don't expect that person to do that group forever, but it gives them an idea, like a roadmap on what they should be doing. And then as they develop, because that's what it is. When you start developing your own style and approaches, you're going to find stuff that you can tailor to yourself and how you deliver. And I highly recommend that, because at the end of the day, and especially in the groups, we are selling recovery, and we are like trying to get the next steps in place. And it's all about how we can frame something and deliver it that fits us. So even though I could do a group that works fantastic for me, someone else might not have the same luck with that, but that doesn't mean they're a bad group facilitator. That just means my style doesn't fit how they deliver. You know what I mean? Potential group problems. Members will do many of the following. Skip from topic to topic. Yes, everybody agree with that one? Dominate the discussion, the monopolizer. That is like a technical term almost. Be chitty chatty rather than personal and focused. Attend sporadically. Be shy and withdrawn, and get angry at the leader. Have we all seen these kind of problems in groups? I know we have. They can get angry at one another, pressure others or force others to speak, preach their personal morality, be resistant because forced to attend, dislike other members, and then stop attending altogether. What do we do in these problem areas? Anybody got any suggestions? We are strong group leaders, mind you, not facilitators. How do you stop the monopolizer?
So I did the women's group yesterday, and we were talking about trauma and substance abuse. And then one of the clients took me over to, it just came out of nowhere about politics and religion. And I let her get 5 words in, and I was like, no, we need to bring this back. You know, this group is not about politics and religion. And I really feel that politics and religion is an individual choice, and that should not be discussed in a group topic.
And thank you, Marilyn, because that's a good example. We redirect, and it doesn't always have to be like harsh, and it doesn't have to be, it might, if you got a persistent client that does it over and over in the same group, you might have to be a little firmer with it. But even just a gentle redirect, hey, that's not really on topic today. Can we talk about that after group if you want? I'd love to have that conversation. There's a lot of ways you can do it. If you persist and keep seeing the client showing some of these behaviors, obviously, if you can make it through the group, make it through the group even without it. But there's nothing wrong with also pulling a client up after group and being like, hey, this can't happen. People hear that, you know, like you're influencing others, whatever you got to say, you know what I mean? Just kind of try to get through to that person that's not appropriate for there. I also would highly recommend, I don't think I have a slide on it. Who in here has done like a group norms board or used one before where it has the group rules? I know it seems corny, and it's something that you probably don't even need all the time, but like, especially when you're starting a group and you got new members, to do that every time to establish the norms in the beginning to kind of set the pace at school. Behaviors go away, you leave it just on the wall and don't even references. You get some new clients come in and it starts happening again. You might want to do it again for a week. I don't know why, and I think any of you guys have been doing it for a while will agree though. There is something to, if we set the expectation and we set like what it is, and it's not going to click right in the spot that day, but if you're every day reminding it, it does sink in. It's kind of like a supplemental, probably like brainwashing, like, but eventually it does sink through.
I think it's important. I think it's important for us to do that, especially in most of the bedded program settings, because we have more of what's called like an open group. So the group members are changing almost consistently. So reminding of the norms is important because the dynamics change almost daily.
I would agree 110. I mean, we want to print some out or see if we can purchase them and just hang them in there. But as the counselor, even just remember, just because they're hung up doesn't mean anybody's reading them. So if you're having a rowdy, it is a good tactic. I've seen it work. I've done groups that maybe there wasn't an issue for 3 months, so I didn't use them. I'm talking more of my outpatient experience. And then I get a rough and rowdy bunch. I do the group norms for a couple times and it kind of just goes away. All right, so stages of group process and the therapeutic forces involved. Stages of group, all groups go through 3 stages. The beginning stage, that's like your open and your check-in. The working stage, that's where you're doing your activities and your exercise. And then the closing stage, where you do kind of a checkout, what you get from group. Everybody would experience, you'd agree with these 3 stages? Other models of sequential stages, Corey's, they're all kind of similar, but I did throw a few on there. So Corey is formation, orientation, transition, working, consolidation, and follow-up. Tuckman's, oh, it's Tuckman, not Yellow. Foreman, Storman, Norman, performing, and adjournment. I like the middle, beginning, middle, and closing. That's kind of the simplest and easiest to spot. Group processes are interactions, energy exchange among members and leaders. Dynamics of interaction patterns. Who talks to whom and how often do members speak? Is the interaction member to member or member to leader? Do you guys understand that difference? If we got someone's always member to leader, especially if we got can anybody give a good example of the client who wants to be co-facilitator? Have we seen this one? Huh? Melissa, you shake your head? You know what I'm talking about? It's not necessarily a one up, but it's more like they're trying to be on your side of the street. And it's hard because you want to encourage like behavior like that and helping others, but there does tip a point where you can see it's kind of not really about that. It's more just about establishing some hierarchy or I know more. And that's when it kind of gets like ventures into something that we want to redirect. So curative factors, how the groups work. This is the alum. It instills hope. It shows universality, imparting of information, altruism, corrective recapitulation of the primary family group. So it's saying like it models that. Development of socialization techniques, imitative behavior, so we learn from each other, interpersonal learning, group cohesiveness, Catharsis, existential factors. I'm not necessarily sure what the Catharsis means. I'm sorry, I should have Googled that. Therapeutic forces. A skilled leader is always paying attention to therapeutic forces in a group. So what they're saying is you want to make sure your group's doing something. You want to make sure that there's like a healing element going on and positive talk that's kind of tailored and the way we deliver is going to encourage that conversation to like naturally develop in a positive way that's going to help all the members. Having a clear purpose of your group, a reason, the primary, like what the topic is about, it's so very important. I think all of us have probably been thrown into a situation willy-nilly where we kind of had to freestyle it. I've got a lot of experience in the field. I think at this point in my career, I can handle that wing pretty well. In the beginning though, those were the ones that were definitely going to go bad for me. Therapeutic forces continue. Group size. What do we know about this one? And some of you know I have peeves around this. I'm looking for my people. You know who you are. Group size. Yes, I see you smiling, Kelsey. Depends on the kind of group. 5 to 12 members usually best. Education groups can be larger. 5 to 12 members. OASIS's cap on a clinical group is 15. Groups should be no longer than 15. I know that sometimes we get a little slack or sometimes we get busy, so we combine groups. And I think in a pinch, I mean, we all know 3 people called in and some shit hit the fan, we might have to do that. But as a norm, I do think when it gets larger, unless it's kind of an education group, it kind of loses that. There's too many people involved and too many dynamics going on and distractions that you kind of lose that therapeutic element. Length of each section depends on the kind of group, varies with members, discussion, topic, education, and clinical group can go from 1 to 2 hours. Frequency of meeting depends on the setting and purpose. So we are like inpatient and residential bedded programs. We're doing daily groups. We're doing groups all day, every day. You know what I mean? Who has a count? How many we do at inpatient a day? About anybody? 5, 6?
6, I think. Yeah.
About
Residential, you guys are about 3 a day. And that's on average, sometimes more, some less. All right, so we do a lot of groups. Groups are a big part of what we're doing here. In part is because we're developing our therapy, but also it's just very good to keep clients busy. You know what I mean? Anybody disagree with that? Adequacy of the setting. Be prepared for inadequate places to conduct groups. Ideally, a private space with the same size chairs. And I'm even going to add in a circle with no table to be doodling and drawing on and no colored pencils. I'm old school. That's how I was taught. I do feel like when they're kind of run structured that way, it's like a behavioral component. Most of our clients have been in therapy before. Everything from the group norms on the wall and us reviewing them to the circle, it just all triggers that we are in that setting and it's time to do group work. Time of day, convenient for leaders and members. After lunch is often difficult. Members can be sleepy. The leaders' attitudes. Members definitely pick up on the positive, negative attitude of leaders. So if you're all pissed off and like, damn it, Dave called in and I got to cover this stupid ass group, they're going to feel that. So even if you are feeling that stuff, you should kind of just try to put on a poker face. Closed or open groups. Does everybody know the difference in these? I think Melissa already referenced this as open. So a closed group would be,
Oh, no.
who was that?
It would be a set amount of clients and no new clients are coming in until that group session, till that ends, whether it's 10 groups or 12 groups.
Yes, we're never going to have that unless we made some special program in here, like maybe we want to do, even still it wouldn't be closed. So a closed group usually has like a specific task in mind. Like I did for perpetrators of domestic violence in Rochester, that was a closed group. Members signed up, it started on this date and it went until this date and we did not enroll during. We finished it and then we recruited new members for the group. That is a closed group. Open group is like what we have in our settings, what we have in the outpatients. They just come and go, people leave, people come in, new people all the time. That's the difference. Voluntary or non-voluntary membership. It is usually an anti-therapeutic force at the beginning with the non-voluntary members, but that can change. I mean, especially an addiction, most of our clients are non-voluntary membership. I mean, the true even if they say they're self-referral, usually there's something that's motivating. The true self-referral is rare in our setting. It really is. Typically there's a mandator or a spouse, someone's kind of putting the foot in to get this done. So that's a large part we do. And we all know that we've had members that might start out rocky and pissy and miserable, but a couple weeks in, they're doing great. Other therapeutic forces, members levers the commitment, levels of trust. The leader is crucial in the development of trust in the group. This part I think is very important. It goes to them problematic behaviors and how we handle them. We need to be those group facilitators, those group leaders that kind of show it's a safe place. That's why there can only be so much love. I mean, has anybody in this meeting ever thrown someone out of a group? Anybody else? Chelsea too? That's it? I can't see everyone. No? It's not an easy thing to do, but it needs to be done sometimes. And like, especially in our program, just because an outpatient, I throw someone out of a group and you might not see them for a week or ever again. This is different. It's okay. We can throw them out. We can get with them and get a behavioral support plan in place after it's needed. Or even if it's not, it might not need a support plan. It might just be like, you need to step away. It's not helping. We want to keep that group as sacred and as therapeutic as possible. You want to keep it a safe place. Members are willing to share and willing to open up some. And on the flip side, I'm teaching this course in the school I do right now. And I gave this example. So we do mock groups. And one of the students, I liked her very much because she chose, she was a cutter and she did it well. Because had she gone into the first group and just as like say admissions, a closed group and it's her first day and she just dumps all of this like private information and too far, that would not be received. And that's a kind of a problematic behavior too. And that's a hard one because you want to be there for them, but it would like trigger some senses. Why is this person opening that far that quickly to all these complete strangers? And in that case, that might have shut it down, but the student did great because they kept their personas throughout the course and she kept it. And she let a little go each time. And in that way, the group kind of worked to support her. So it's the same topic and the same thing. So just because someone brings up cutting, we don't want to just shut that down magically, but like you do have to be like conscientious of your group dynamics and if that's appropriate for that person to share right now. And that's a delicate topic. So even if it goes a little too far, maybe something we'll unpack later. I think even just asking in a group, hey, is it all right with me and you talk about this later on? Because I really want to talk about that with you. But like right now, can we just keep it focused here? Don't even make it about the cutting, but kind of redirect. But again, if you got a group and they're very cohesive and someone's struggling and mentions that, and it's not in a way that kind of makes people anxious or nervous and they show true support, that might be something you want to let go in that case and let the group do what it's supposed to do. Members' attitudes towards the leader experience in leading groups, co-leadership harmony between group leader and members, leaders knowing when to lead and when to follow. Before moving on, we're gonna get into purpose of group soon. I'll wait till I get there. So process and content. Balance between process versus content. Common mistake is to focus too much on one or the other. Process here refers to the group dynamics and the therapeutic forces we just discussed. Content refers to the purpose or the task of the group. Should be a natural flow, and focusing on one or the other can lead to hindering the group dynamics and therapeutic forces. So purpose of the group. Above all else, I feel like this is the most crucial element. You have to have a plan. You have to have a reason you're doing the group, a goal of the group, what the group is supposed to serve, because that's your guiding point. You don't have to stay rigid. I mean, you might go in there with 2 activities planned in a short video, but you only get to the one video or to the video in one of the activities. That's okay. You still got your purpose off. You know what I mean? I'd even recommend, especially if you're new to doing the groups, always have a backup that would fit in, because sometimes you've been doing this for a while and you've been asked all the same questions, you do all the same topics, you kind of can get a better feel at how long it's going to take. I know starting out, sometimes you might think, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to go through the whole group. And then next thing you know, 20 minutes in, you are just out of information. You know what I'm saying? Like you are done. So it's always good to have like another worksheet or something just in case it's a backup or another activity plan. I do want to talk about videos. I fundamentally believe any of you who I've trained personally, I probably gave you this spiel. I love a nice open-in 5-10 minute TED talk, inspirational speech, anything like that. That it has to admit your purpose in your group goal and topic, but like, so you got to do a little homework on it. I ain't big on showing movies. I ain't big on documentaries like that. That's no offense. And if anybody doesn't, I am sorry. That's kind of just being lazy, because that's not a group therapy. I mean, once in a blue moon, if it's really relevant, or maybe we did all this hard work for 2 months, so we're going to like celebrate by watching this kind of recovery-oriented movie, that might be okay. But as a whole, we should not be videoing them to death. However, putting a 5-10 minute thing to kind of, I mean, let's just call it what it is. Clients and ourselves included, if there is like something entertaining on that Chinese screen, we kind of just draw into it and zone out for a minute. And I also think it kind of primes the brain and gets some focus, like start thinking about what we're going to be talking. And I've never done any research on it, but I do feel like opening up like that is an opening exercise after your check-in. Obviously, it kind of primes the brain to get you thinking that direction. It kind of leads to a more in-depth conversation or better answers when whatever the activity may be. So purpose of the group. Being clear about the purpose of the group is perhaps the most important group leadership concept to be learned. Clarity of purpose helps the leader keep the members on course by suggesting relevant activities, asking relevant questions, and cutting off irrelevant discussions. And again, early on when we open up, it is a skill. Group counseling is a skill set, and you will get better at it. And on top of getting it better, you've been doing this for some years. You have been asked every crazy question. You have been challenged with every crazy thing, and you start to be able to anticipate those or have answers. Like maybe you get asked something in a group you did not anticipate, you have no idea what it is. It is okay to say that in a group. We don't have to act like a know-it-all, but I bet you're going to find out for the next one. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how they call it practice for a reason. That's what we're doing. Another thing for counselors starting out or kind of new to the field, I also highly recommend, I mean, I'm always down to explore some new stuff, but I just have core topics that I have been doing for almost 10 years. And that's why if someone went home right now and they're like, you have to do a group in 2 minutes on relapse prevention, I would be totally fine walking in there and doing that, because you become an expert on those topics. And don't get me twisted. I'm not saying I've done the same things for 10 years. I'd like to talk about triggers. I've done worksheets on triggers. I found videos. I've done discussions. I've done all these different things, but in a way I've covered all information that a client's ever shared or that the researchers ever showed on it after you do that topic for a long period of time. So you kind of just get better at it, if that makes sense. When the leader is unclear about the purpose, groups can be confusing, boring, unproductive. To ensure clarity, objectives should be well-defined. The leader should always follow the stated objectives. And that can be hard, because obviously if you're opening the group up and a client just really has some shit, you're going to want to follow that client and give that client something that they really need. If it's relevant and they need to get off chest, it's their group. You want to allow for that. Again, the problematic behavior is the monopolizing, trying to get off course intentionally, trying to like control the group. You're going to have to redirect and control that. But if someone's like in one of our settings, mom just went to the hospital yesterday, you might not get to your group that day. It might be more about supporting the client. So you can't be super rigid, but if you do bend, there has to be a good reason. You can't just go off topic and willy-nilly about the new rims Travis Scott has on his car or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, I know who he is. This guy got kids. You know what I mean? Determine the purpose of the group. The leader must assess potential members' needs and then decide which kind of group will be most helpful. During the first sessions of any group, the leader needs to clarify the purpose with the members. The first sessions have two purposes: getting members comfortable with the group and introducing the content. Common questions about purpose. Certain questions arise regarding the purpose of group. Can the group have more than one purpose? Must each session have a purpose? Can the purpose change? Can there be no purpose? As the leader is clear, will the members be? With clear purpose, groups often start out as education, support, or growth group. As they develop, dynamics can change and members begin to share on a more personal level. While a group's primary goal may not change, groups can take a life of their own and relevant topics to goal can come up. The group leader must remain flexible as members contribute, can add to or change objectives when directly related to the group goals. So stay true to your core is what that's saying. Stay true to what you're there for, but also be willing, like if the clients are taking it to a good place, of course you're going to follow that. That goes back to one of the earlier sites about knowing when to lead and when to follow. You know what I mean? I think all of us have been doing enough now. We have seen some healing dynamics in group. Would anybody challenge that? You have seen some big things happen and people have some incredible insights and kind of get great feedback and support from their members. I mean, it kind of what feeds me to keep going. So I assume it does everybody else. I will also say, like, I am serious business about groups. I think as a counselor, that's what I miss most. I never really liked individuals. I mean, who really likes assessments and treatment plans? I love group counseling and I was a motivator. Marilyn, can I get a cosign? Stabilization loved me, didn't they? I did the 5-day group and the clients wanted to stay with me. It was crazy. You know what I mean? After they graduated. So groups are a powerful thing. And it's like you are creating that sense of community and belongingness if you're doing it. And you're also teaching skills. It's a serious business. Incompatible purposes. Let me move you guys because I can't see this. Sometimes leaders mix purpose in ways that do not work. For example, a therapist leading a group on a parent training might mistakenly spend 30 minutes of the group's time doing counsel with a woman complaining about her husband. Could we all like attribute this to our setting as well? If we get off topic and we get focused on the wrong thing, we didn't do a group. We just spent half the group or the whole group talking, doing an individual session with 10 other people in the room. You know what I mean? We do want to avoid that as well. Incompatible purposes differ from group changes, dynamics, and objectives. As the group leader, is important to keep the group focused on the purpose of the group always. When the leader is unclear about purpose, groups are confusing, boring, and unproductive. When the objectives are not well defined or leader does not follow the stated objective, to ensure that clarity, objectives must be well defined. The leader should follow the stated objectives. Purpose in single session groups. You guys want me to skip this because we're never going to do this anyway? Well, actually, we might. We do it like the nutrition group or an NRT might come up. So that's a different thing. That's like you're just doing one group on a topic and that's it. Hit it, split it. That's done. We're moving on. Like that's. I can't think of many. An orientation group. I know we've talked about that. That would be something like that. So in that case, some groups meet only once. A task group in a school setting, a psychoeducation group on nutrition, a job seeking skill development group. For single session groups, clarity of purpose is even more important because that's it. It's a one-time shot deal and we got to get it all out there. Evaluating groups. An outcome evaluation model objectively examines reported behavioral changes in members. A self-evaluation model asks the leader to set objectives for a session group and then assess outcome. A member's evaluation model can be done periodically in the final session, giving the leader ongoing and closing feedback. So think about like the surveys we do. And we, as a professional, you are too, like Jennifer and I have been talking like that. There is an element that we monitor ourselves and we track our outcomes and we see that what we're doing effective. Obviously, there's an element of luck of the draw. There's the clients that we might get in a single stage. So like when I was talking to her about it, you can't necessarily just look at 1 month. But if you've been doing this around and you're looking at your outcomes for 3 months, 6 months, you kind of get an idea of how you're doing. You know what I mean? We work in a field where success rates are not high, but you still like there is a baseline and we know we're above or below it. And again, like if you're having a bad week and that doesn't mean you're necessarily wrong. You have bad 3 months, you might want to look at some change. So evaluate the CASA does do those surveys. We do the client surveys. Do they? I don't remember. We do group surveys in there. Melissa, I always make, you always do the, is there any about groups? Outpatient, we did this, Marilyn, you remember that, didn't you? They would do the evaluations right during group.
Yep.
I'm assuming that those ones we get too. I feel bad right now. I'm busted because I just showed that I don't think I've ever even read the ones here, but yes, I'm pretty sure we do them.
We
But
don't,
even, no?
I've never seen a group evaluation done.
All right, maybe we can make one. Maybe we could do one, but even if we don't, again, you as the professional, I think there is an element. If you want to know if you're doing his work, you start looking at that. You could do your kind of self-report, keeping track, or a client survey at the end of it. We could add it to our exit surveys, even like what the thought was on group, but also kind of just being mindful of how members are performing. I mean, we get a client that starts out hot and heavy, and in a week, the core members have kind of absorbed them and they're participating. That means that we're staying on track. If we get a client that's hot and heavy and they come over and they take over the whole group, and a week later, the whole entire group is crazy, then we might want to change some tactics. You know what I mean? Research and training and group leadership, there continues to be need for formal research to determine effectiveness of group work. Training and group work needs to be tailored more to the needs of the specific population. Trainees, students need more supervised experience about both general leaderships and skills expertise in population areas. I know this one is hard for me, and I actually have not stalked any of you of late. Even though I could not hear, I always liked watching groups on video. I feel like when I audit or when I sit in, it's artificial. I feel like that when other supervisors have done that with me, everybody's on their best behavior anyways. It's clients too, man. It's like, you know what I mean? And there's like an artificial element to it. So like, I know I can't hear, but if I know what a counselor's doing in a group and I'm watching on video, I can tell by body language and everybody's in the circle, and you can see the difference of when it's that and when there's no control over the group, when there is. And if I know there's a good purpose and I see like good processes going on in the group, I wish I could have sound, but I don't. So I prefer looking like that. If you guys ever want me to do one with you, I'd be glad to sit in. And that's another thing too. I usually can't keep my mouth shut. So I end up talking, you know what I mean? So group planning, this is planning activities and exercises you're going to do in your group. Pre-group planning, many groups are not successful due to too little emphasis on pre-group planning. Pre-group planning, this is for the whole group. How many sessions will the group meet? When will the group meet? Who should the members be? This should be carefully thought out. For these ones, though, being our settings, these are pretty much already determined for us because the members are going to be whoever intake has cleared to come in. But again, we do have some specialty ones. We do have some, I know, especially in residential, they do parenting and lifestyle. Usually prevention does them ones, but there are, we've talked about some voc ed ones that are probably going to be selective membership. You know what I mean? So it's coming, but right now it really is. We just do the same groups for everybody. Big picture planning. Big picture planning entails considering all possible topics that need to be covered and all possible topics that could be covered. By doing this, the leader thinks through the purpose of the topics to be covered and how the group may evolve over the life of the group. Session planning. When planning a session, the leader should always consider the stage of the group. Plan the format for the session. Some groups have the same format. Each section, some group have a varied format. Anticipate problems when planning. Members not following through on outside activities, member being absent, unanticipated issues arising in the group. For members being absent, what are we going to do if that member is absent?
Figure out why they're absent.
How are we going to do it? Go get them.
Yeah.
Get their ass up. You know what I mean? That's the one benefit we have. I probably talked to some of you guys, like, everybody knows CASA is pretty data driven. In the outpatient settings, they track group attendance. They can't hold us to that. I mean, if we go under 90, we're kind of doing shitty because they live here. I mean, a couple of missed groups, most of them were in the group that day. So doing roundups, want to get them in, that's going to help too. And I just had to throw it out there. And if it's really trouble, what else do we do, Melissa? They really refuse.
Give them an SI.
That's it. Phase of the session. Every group has 3 phases: the beginning or warm-up phase, the middle or working phase, and the closing phase. We already talked about this one. The beginning or warm-up phase, always have a warm-up phase. Make sure it's not too long, make it relevant. Let members check in, give progress report, check to see if any member says something they want to bring up. Be aware of unanticipated issue distractions among members. I'm willing to bet everybody on this one can do a similar one. Would anybody give an example of what a warm-up phase activity would look like? I'll call you out if no one volunteers. I'm looking at one right now. You hear me?
I've never really done like I guess, okay. So going back a little bit, I didn't know that there was like 3 phases in groups because I never really have done that. But like, I always start my groups with just like, how's everybody doing today?
That's the check-in. You do a check-in. And that can vary.
That's all I do.
We can tailor, I think it should be a little bit more than how's everybody doing. There's different things. Anybody else got an example before I give one?
When I do seeking safety, I ask them to look through the packet so they don't get surprised by any of the items that are coming toward them, to just kind of just get acclimated to what the topic is for that day.
All right, that's all right. What you got?
Well, with Seek and Safety too, there's the quote, and I'd let them know what the topic is and kind of ask their opinion on that. But also during the Seek and Safety training, they had like a one-page sheet of a check-in and then a closing at the end of what they learned from the topic.
Yeah,
So I started doing that, after the training.
that's what I'm more looking for, because it's just a good way to kind of, like the video I said it, and the video could be, the warm-up phase can't be too long. You're looking at, you want like 15 minutes tops. So if you do a quick round with like name, last used date, how you're feeling, and then what's quote of the day mean to you, like put the quote on the board, and that's how everybody does their check-in, 10-minute video or 5-minute video, and then you're into your activity. That would be a good warm-up stage. Anybody else got any other examples?
So when I did the women's group yesterday, and especially when I do groups on trauma, I always ask them, is there anybody in here who's gonna have an issue with this group? And one of the girls got up and she said, yeah, I do, because I don't know if I could stay in with this or not. And then the other girls kind of like formed like a warm blanket around her.
All right,
And told her, you might want to stay because you can't keep running away from it. And she came to the conclusion, well, yeah, they're right. I do have to face it sooner or later. I can't keep running away from groups on trauma because I don't want to deal with my own personal trauma.
that is beautiful,
She
Mary.
did really good in the group.
Gave me chills right there. That is the healing property and support we are loving to see in a good group. All right. So yes, that's a good warm up. Melissa, you better get with it. You know what I mean? It's my fault. I'm going to take blame, Melissa, because I told you that I was going to make you a group trained in the LMS system and I never did it. When
Can you
started doing
specify like what Melissa you're talking to? Cause like,
you
I
right
know
now.
that, I feel like that was really directed at me, but also like, remember, I was nervous about groups.
I know it. And I told you I was going to make this video. That's what I'm saying. I'm taking some ownership. You were like, hey, I never really done groups like that. I'm nervous. I said, don't worry about it. I'm going to make you this video. It's going to be great. I'm a little bit behind. You know what I mean?
Right. You picked me up and you just like threw me in there.
I did do that. I did do that. I'm gonna own that. I'm sorry.
Emotionally, you did, David.
I said I did do it. I owned it.
Yeah,
Gee,
you owned
I
it.
mean, that's it. All right. Well, now you know. Get your warm-up phase together. No, I'm just joking. For open groups, the leader needs to plan for introducing a new member. And that's something too. Hey, we had such and such join us. I think that's a natural thing. Don't let this dominate. Let the new member come up to speed. Focus mainly on the old members. The leader should give thought to whether the warm-up is high energy to get members excited or medium energy. As any you can imagine, I usually prefer the high energy model, but I think that's about personality above all else. So whatever works for you. You know what I mean? Are you talking to us, Melissa, or someone else? Because your mic's on if you are.
I'm talking to Jess. I
Yeah.
agree, because I'm trying to make groups like, I feel like the more high energy and the more energetic I am, the better they feel about me.
Yeah, you gotta pump it up, get them
I
excited.
try to be like, what's up? How's everybody doing? This is what we're like. I try to be like,
Yeah,
even
another
for
beautiful
grief and
day.
loss, and I freaking hate that group. Just brings my whole emotion down. Everything.
If in lost, you're gonna want to probably do medium energy with that one. No
I
matter.
know.
There's
That's
no
a
way you
hard
can put
group.
a high energy spin on that. But for the most part, yeah, it's excited day in recovery, excited day of sobriety, happy to be here. You know what I mean? We're gonna put some work in and start healing. Oh yeah, if you can sell it, you know what I mean? But I think the grief and loss is a great example though, because it is knowing the audience, knowing the purpose of group, because grief and loss is a little bit serious and you don't want to start that out telling jokes and getting people hyped up. You know what I mean? The middle or working phase. Planning the middle phase is important since this is when groups do meaningful and lasting work. Planning this phase depends on the kind of group and the makeup of the member. Counseling or therapy groups, education groups, support groups, tax exploration and resolution. So like finding that solution focused stuff, finding the solution. Values exploration and personal growth. The closing phase, a common mistake is to not plan for the closing of the session. A closing should be highlight or summarize the issues or information, allow leader to check for confusion or unfinished business, enhance members' commitment to the purpose of the group. I think the closing phase is relatively simple because you just go around, you got 5-10 minutes left of group, you say, hey, we're done for this today, and we're gonna go around in a circle one more time. I want everybody to share what they took most from this, or name 2 things that stuck out to you, something like that. And it's just an easy way, the clients respond well to it, and it kind of wraps up the group nicely. Session plans, estimate the time for each phase of the group, develop enough details so you can see the flow of the session. And I know when I'm planning a group and I can't be the only one, I do try to play that out in my head, especially if I'm like doing something new or changing something I did. And that goes back to what I said earlier. I think like always having a backup activity in your pocket just in case you run out is a good idea. You know what I mean? Even Beston been doing it well. Sometimes it's the group dynamic. I mean, I've done groups that I've done them 10 times and they were great. And then for some reason it just fizzled on this one. And I have no idea why that dynamic was different, but it's something, you know what I mean? It could have been the people were there, could have been the mood I was in there that day, but I'll tell you what, I was glad I had a backup exercise because it can get awkward, you know what I mean? Like, especially if you're just run out. You have to be comfortable with some level of awkward silence because if we're trying to get members to participate and come out, has anybody ever done that? To kind of draw out shy members and like, you can't just make it. I don't want to say aggressive, that's not the word, but like.
Jess raised her hand. She-
Go ahead, Jess. Give me an example because I'm having trouble with the word.
Oh, I just pause and wait and somebody will start talking and then it goes.
Yeah, you gotta be
up there.
comfortable with that.
Usually one of the older clients shares and then, meeker or less comfortable, more anxious client will jump off of that because they connect with each other better.
Yeah. That's a better example of what I was trying to say, because you have to be comfortable willing to do. If we're doing all the talking, then they're not doing any of the work. So you kind of got to draw out members in that way, but also not sit there and make it uncomfortable and weird. After a point, you might have to call on someone directly, switch gears, whatever it might be. And those are kind of the skill sets I think that we develop as we go. So sample plan, the first session of early recovery consisted of 10 members. You do 5 minutes for intros, round, name, last few, why they came to group, 10 minutes discussing the group. So Jennifer, that'd be kind of what you were talking. I think that was a good activity for that. Like check out the material and see this before we get going. So format the purpose, have members share their needs and any fears or questions about the group, have them share cultural difference, sandwich in the group rules of confidentiality, attendance, no tack and earth. I'm telling you, the group rules are something that I encourage this if you ain't been doing it. It's good. It's a good pace setter. Brief sentence completion. This would be kind of like a warm-up thing. 10-minute activity produces material which begins to begin as a discussion or as a handout. So like they finish the sentence. Maybe you want to just type out am I the only one that makes my own worksheets if I can't find a perfect one? If I really can't find a worksheet that I'm trying to I just make it, you know what I mean? So this could be something you just keep on hand, and I tend to use when they fill in those blank, and maybe as a warm-up exercise, everybody goes through and shares that. 15 minutes have members share their answers, what we were just talking about. So that would be more of the activity part. In 10 minutes, discuss in a large group, then continue the overviews of principles of themes shared and answers of initial questions. So after everybody in the group shared, you kind of want to point to the commonality and the things that people had similar and kind of like flush that out a little bit more. 10 minutes to summarize what stood out, feelings about the group, one thing they plan to do different, hand out reading material, remind them of the next meeting. And then that's it. That's your group. 60 minutes. See you later. It's time for lunch. You know what I mean? Frequent mistakes in planning, not planning too much, irrelevant or meaningless content, not allowing enough time for the group to have any significant meaning. Anybody got any questions with this stuff? I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Examples of when, I mean, I could tell you some horror stories of group that didn't go well for me. Nothing? All right. I'm not going to share if you're not done. You know what I mean, we're all perfect. No, I'm just joking. Other frequent mistakes in planning, inappropriate exercises, too many exercises, poor planning of time, poor planning of order, not planning an interest in beginning. I do believe in the interest in beginning. If you catch the attention early, it kind of draws out a little bit more. What do they mean by poor planning of order though? I think that's a common mistake. It's easy to point to. Anybody got ideas? Say we're trying to get to this specific overall concept, and we just start with a video from some psychiatrist that's using all the jargon and really makes even us that have been trained in it kind of have a little trouble following. And we start with that. That's what we open. Maybe we could end with it after we did some exercise, had some discussion, wrote some of the keywords on the whiteboard. We might be able to end with that. Poor planning of order though would be starting with that video. Does that make sense? Too many exercises. Self-explanatory, everybody gets that? You go in there, switching gears every 5 minutes, doing a bunch of different things, and you're like, what the hell did we just do? Allowing too much time for the warm-up would be another mistake. Not allowing enough time for the warm-up, vague plans, and lack of flexibility. Yes, you can't just be in there super rigidly. I said we're doing this today, you know what I mean? Like you kind of got, there is a give and take that you have to be comfortable with. Again, you want to get your purpose off and your group goals and objectives off, but at the same time, remember, it is the client's group and what they're there for. If they're being appropriate, we're going to be following more than we're leading, but also being mindful to protect the sanctity of the group and to stay on course. Key points about planning: always plan, have a backup plan in mind in case things don't go as expected. Be flexible during the session. Do not become a slave to the plan. Stick to the plan unless something comes up that is equal to or better than what you have planned. I like that one a lot. All right, so that's all I got today. Stay on for a minute. I would consent all you guys this power.